So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session, which is focused on environmental and ecological sciences. So I'm going to be joined today by some of my colleagues from Earth and Ocean Science, from Marine Science, Environmental Science, Zoology, and Botany and Plant Science. My name is Gavin Collins. I'm Vice Dean for Student Recruitment at the College of Science and Engineering here at NUI Galway. So I'm going to share my screen with you and we'll go through some slides initially and we'll follow that then with a short panel discussion where we'll answer perhaps some of the questions you might have around the subjects in this area. So bear with me whilst I just move to full screen. And as I said, we're focused here on Earth and Ocean Science, Marine Science, Environmental Science, Botany and Plant Science, and Zoology. So how might you study some of the subjects in this area? Well, we offer two ways to study science at the university. And if you attend our live session on studying science at NUI Galway, you can learn all about that or watch it back later on. So the first of those main ways is through our main degree, our flagship Bachelor of Science degree, GY 301, which has 19 different pathways. And 3 of those are zoology, botany and plant science, and you can see down at the bottom here, earth and ocean sciences. But it's also possible to apply for one of our 12 standalone degrees. And if I just make this slide a little more busy, and on top of the 19 pathways you could pursue through GY 301, I'll also now add our other 12 standalone or direct entry degrees. And you can see that amongst those are marine science, environmental science, and earth and ocean science. So I'll invite a few of my colleagues then to briefly give you a flavor of some of the information they have on those pathways, zoology and botany and plant science, and those 3 degrees, marine science, environmental science, and earth and ocean science. So the first of those colleagues is Tiernan Henry. So Tiernan, I'll invite you to put your sound on, and I'll advance through the slides as you tell me to move. So welcome, Tiernan.
Thanks, Gavin. Hello, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this introduction to all of the various programs we have in ARFO for you. My name is Tiernan Henry. I'm the head of Earth and Ocean Science, and I'm going to go over very briefly some aspects about the Earth and Ocean Science degree program and give you some sort of sense of the pathways involved. So as you can see on the slide there, the degree will give you the skills and the tools to better understand how the Earth works and how to become tomorrow's geoscientists. And on the bottom right of the slide, you can see there the various kind of aspects that we cover across the program, from exploring earth and oceans processes and structures. You'll also learn how to assess and explain natural and human impacts on the earth. And most importantly, probably you'll be prepared for a career in geosciences. And critically, geoscience in the broadest sense underpins the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So the great societal challenges that we face now and that we'll face in coming years and that you will face in coming years and coming decades will require scientists who understand how the earth works and how we can work more equitably with the earth. And the program is designed to train you to become one of those scientists. So the basic outline of the program is presented here. In first year, you'll do chemistry, physics, biology, and maths typically, and these will set you up for the second year. And in the second year, we'll introduce you to the fundamentals of geology and the fundamentals of oceanography. So we've 2 big courses, 2 10-credit courses in second year, the Earth from Core to Crust and Introduction to Oceanography. And then when we get you into third year, you can see the range of specialist topics that will cover various aspects of the earth side of things and various aspects of the ocean side of things. The idea here is to give you more deeper skill sets that become more specialized as you move into final year as well. And in final year, again, what you'll tend to do is what we find is that our students will either be leaning towards the ocean side or towards the earth side. And your final year project is typically going to be structured around some aspect of area that you're interested in, whether it's on the earth side or on the ocean side. And then the various other topics that are available across the remainder of the year will give you more specialism once again. And of course, this is a field-based discipline, as are some of the other disciplines that you'll be hearing about shortly. So in second year, we'll take you to Antrim for a very short residential trip. In third year, we take you to Wexford for a longer residential trip. And in final year, you'll go to County Clare, but you'll also get an opportunity to get some ship time as well. And what students really do find is useful about doing the field work in particular is that it'll help you to meet all your classmates and become a class, but you'll also get a real sense of all of the various concepts that we deal with and how they interact in the real world. So in sum, really, what you'll learn in EOS is you'll learn new ways of thinking about the earth. You'll learn new ways of reading the land and the sea and the seabed. And you'll learn new ways of thinking about the depths of time. And you'll never look at the earth the same way again.
Excellent. So thanks very much for that, Tiernan. I'm going to move on then to my colleague, Professor Mike Gormley. So you're with us, Mike?
Yes, I am indeed.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll also move through your slides then, Mike, so you can tell us a little bit about the environmental science degree.
Okay, my name is Mike Gormley. I'm here to talk to you about the environmental science degree. I'm director of the program. CEO points varies from year to year depending on the number of students that are entered into the course. I think last year was 408 points, the year before 413. It varies around that most years. Next slide, Gavin, please. Now, environmental science is very much a multidisciplinary course. You do quite a range of subjects, including law for 3 years. Very important that environmental scientists know their law. If you take someone to court for a pollution incident, for example, you're the person in the hot seat where you're going to be questioned, so you got to know your law. That's quite important. Microbiology is very important as well, particularly with waste management. And for those of you who are coming into first year, you have options in first year. So let's say, for example, you haven't done physics or chemistry before and you're a bit worried about doing full modules in those topics. You can do a half physics, half chemistry course in first year, which is designed specifically for people who haven't done physics or chemistry for their leaving cert. And you do that with psychology and field studies. That's one option. Psychology, pretty important as well, because environmental scientists, you know, when you graduate, you might know the solution to environmental problem, but bringing people along with you and convincing them of the need to make changes is something else. And that's why psychology can be important there. Or the other preference is that you can do full physics and full chemistry if that's what you wish to do as well. And then in second year, I'm a great believer in getting the old hands dirty, getting out into the field. So you have ecological survey techniques, where you go out and survey for mammals, invertebrates, plant surveys, and so on. And you also do earth and ocean science, very important. It's the basis for all our habitats, zoology, botany, microbiology, and law. In third year, we get more into those of nature conservation, habitat management. And as you get to know your interests, you can start looking at taking a number of options. There are 4 options in third year. And then when you get finally to fourth year, you do a major research project for your fourth year. You can choose 2 options, and you also do things like environmental impact assessment, which is when somebody wants to get planning permission for a large development. It could be a motorway, it could be a wind farm, solar farm. Surveys have to be done of the site where the proposed development is going to see what's there first of all, and then you have to make predictions about what the impact on that may be. It could be the soils, it could be the air, it could be the plants and animals, and that's a big part of the fourth year course. Okay, next slide, Gavin, please. Now, why would you come to Galway to do an environmental science degree? Well, I suppose the first thing is that students actively engage in the environment by undertaking numerous fieldwork exercises, and Tiernan already touched on that. And here we have some final year students doing some water quality assessments in a river in County Galway. And in the next slide, you'll see some third years doing a survey of a woodland to the west of Galway to assess the type of woodland it is and the quality of the woodland. Next slide, Gavin, please. Second reason is, and we're very lucky in Galway, we're surrounded by some of the most pristine and unique habitats in Europe. And I'll give you some examples of those. So if you go to the west of the university, you've got the blanket bogs out in Connemara. Many of them are protected. But if you look at the lower right-hand slide, many of them have suffered degradation as well. And this is where environmental scientists come in to help develop solutions to these problems. You can see in that slide, sorry, Gavin, go back to the previous slide, you're going a bit fast for me there. Yeah, you can just see in the lower slide, that's evidence of overgrazing that happened in the 1990s. And although that has stopped, it's still recovering. And the upper slide shows you the effects of tourism. Tourism can cause a lot of damage to blanket bogs as well. Okay, next slide, Gavin, please. Can you hear me, Gavin? Yeah. Here we have habitats that are found just on the west coast of Ireland from Galway to Donegal and the west coast of Scotland. These are coastal grasslands, and you can see from the slide they're very species rich in plants. Again, they suffer degradation, as you can see there, where people drive across them to get to the beach or camp on them, and that damages the plant communities and also causes erosion of the coastlines. Next slide, Gavin, please. Then if you head north and south of Galway, you've got turloughs, and these are practically unique to Ireland. Many of them are protected. There's only one in Wales, and that's it. The rest are in Ireland. And these are unique because they are areas that flood in the wintertime, if you see in the upper slide. And then in the lower slide, the water disappears through a swallow hole, a bit like a plug hole in a bath, and it exposes all this land. And this is managed by farmers, and they play a major role in managing these particular types of sites. Again, many are protected, and they're of international importance because they've got plants and animals that can survive very wet and very dry conditions, unusual communities. Okay, Gavin, next slide. To the east, we've got the Shannon Callows, one of the last floodplain meadows in Western Europe. Again, very species rich. And again, we connect with farmers and how these should be managed for nature conservation and biodiversity. And next slide, Gavin, please. And then finally, the jewel in the crown to the south of Galway, we have the Burren. And this is where you get plants that you normally find growing in the Mediterranean. They're growing side by side with plants that you find in the Alps or in the Arctic. Very unique region. And we have a field station here as well that the university uses for field courses and so on. I would say that the sort of careers that people go into from environmental science, very broad range of careers because there's a broad range of subjects covered, but things like environmental consultancy, environmental protection agency, Inland Fisheries Board, National Parks and Wildlife Service, and so on. There's quite a broad range of careers open to people taking environmental science. Thanks, Gavin.
Thanks so much. I think that's a fascinating insight into what might be in store for some students who might be interested in environmental science. So maybe we'll just keep moving on then. And next, I'm going to invite my next colleague, Professor Mark Johnson, to speak a little bit about our degree in marine science.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Gavin. Yes, so I'm Mark Johnson, the director of the marine science degree. If you're emailing marine science at NUI Galway, you get to me, or you can just email me directly if you want to follow up with questions about the course. So the course is one that involves zoology, botany, microbiology, oceanography. So it's a multidisciplinary course that brings together lots of subjects to understand how do the oceans function. Next one, Gavin. I'm obviously obliged to show a slide with lots of blue on. And if you're interested in marine science, you're already fully aware of this. That's the next one, please, Gavin. And we take you through the whole ecosystem. So, you know, starting off with the plankton are obviously important for productivity in the oceans and going up through food chains, but also for sequestering carbon. Some of the carbon taken on by phytoplankton sinks and gets buried at the ocean floor. And some of the carbon created by photosynthesis ends up in megafauna, charismatic megafauna like this turtle. And the next slide. And even more charismatic megafauna like this megamouth shark. And the thing that I found amazing, sorry, Gavin, about the megamouth shark is that that was, okay, this is completely ancient history for most of the people watching this perhaps, but that was actually discovered in my lifetime, something that big that wasn't named or really seen before 1976. Okay, the next one. Another kind of surprising thing, probably most people are aware of basking sharks, second biggest fish and found in Irish waters, but maybe not so aware of them breaching. So this, for me, was a discovery only a few years ago when I saw people showing videos and publishing on this behavior. so that there's full of discovery. And of course, the oceans, we rely on them as a primary source of protein. And more, going on to the next slide, we're moving out industries into the ocean. So we need to know what's the way to reduce environmental impacts as we move things like renewable energy infrastructure out into the oceans. And if you've been in touch or seen anything from the Marine Institute, you'll be aware of this. This is what they promote as the real map of Ireland, which shows really how much opportunity there is for Irish marine science with this huge area of continental shelf and exclusive economic zone. So back down to our programme. It's a 4-year programme. It's the only Irish university offering this programme in marine science, and we do have a very high concentration of marine scientists. We'll move on. I won't say too much about the modules. You get the idea with most of these programs that the first year is pretty much in common. We'll move on to the next one. This gives you the sort of overflow or overview of taking a core of marine science modules with exactly what you'd expect, marine zoology and so on. But then there are opportunities to add to this by taking modules from other disciplines. And the same point that Mike made, we also have opportunities with social science, and something like the ocean and marine politics module is very useful for getting a wider idea and for something moving on to careers in marine science. And yes, there's practical skills developed during lab work, but also during field excursions. And I myself teach a module where we have field work mapping out on the shore. Move on. And perhaps the pinnacle that happens in all these pathways is the final year project. And this is something that students really appreciate, that they get to go into an area in depth and in fact develop some degree of expertise. And there is a real sense of achievement, I think, when a student in the 4th year prints off the first draft of the final year project and holds it in their hands with, yeah, I did this. And of course, that's something that everyone will ask you. Every employer will ask you about that if you're in the science area. What did you do your project on? I'd love to say that marine science, you had a much better chance of a job than all the other science degrees, but in fact, we're in the same ballpark. But the thing is, of course, there are very interesting careers. If you're interested in careers in aquaculture, in environmental impact assessment in the sea, working for state agencies, working for companies, all those careers happen, and we have plenty of examples of our graduates who are working in those positions, not only in Ireland, but around the world. Okay, thanks very much.
Great, thanks so much, Mark. And next along the line, we move to zoology. So my colleague, Dr. Power, Anne-Marie Power, is here.
Thank you, Gavin. So lots of people are actually unaware of what studying the subject of zoology means. And zoology is the science which deals with the study of animal structure and function, animal behavior, taxonomic classification, geographic distribution, and animal conservation. And it encompasses many sub-areas and also many different tools to study these. So, for example, as zoologists, we're interested in the evolutionary relationships between different groups of animal species, or taxa as they are known. And to study these evolutionary relationships, we use modern tools. So we use things like molecular genetics, bioinformatics. But we're also interested in the ecology and the conservation of animal populations, including those which are under threat. So to study threatened populations, we need to use spatial tools or map or geographic information systems to make maps of their habitat, along with statistical tools. So these are just two areas in zoology, the evolutionary side and the ecological side. But of course, there are many other areas, including physiology or animal behavior, for example. So next slide, Gavin. To enter the bachelor's degree in zoology, you just enter the general GY 301 pathway, which Gavin mentioned at the very beginning. And you take 4 subjects in first year, one of which is biology. So the zoology department teaches a quarter of this biology degree, with the other 3 quarters being made up from botany, plant science, biochemistry, and microbiology. In the second year, about 1/3 of your modules will be in zoology. And you will learn about, in second year, you will learn about the tree of life. So the relationships between all organisms. But then you'll also have modules focused on all the animals which lack a backbone, called the invertebrates. And another module devoted to all the animals which possess a backbone, called the vertebrates. So after second year, you should have a really good idea of all the different types of animal, their characteristics, what characteristics they share and what characteristics make each taxon unique. Third year is a more specialised year. Half the modules in third year are devoted to zoology and half are devoted to one other subject. When you take your third year zoology modules, you'll be taking much more specialised modules dealing with, for example, different habitats. So one module will be on marine habitats, which will cover everything from pelagic systems at the surface right down to the deep sea. Other modules would be on animal population and community ecology. And this would deal with threatened species, for example, threatened populations. And others then would be on things like conservation and applied ecology. There's a specialised module on evolution in third year and another one on tools, including GIS and biostatistics. Your fourth year in zoology it's completely zoology in fourth year. You do nothing else except zoology. And the majority of your work will be kind of continuously assessed, and especially this research project, which Mark mentioned before, that makes up 1/3 of your final year, that project. It's 20 credits. So this research project is really going to allow you to develop specialised skills. And then other modules that you take in fourth year will complement that. So for example, you will get a field course, which is called Practical Skills. You will also get a course in biometry, which is about data handling. You need to be able to handle data as a zoologist. But you'll also have courses on current issues and contemporary topics like the impacts of global warming or things like sustainable fisheries. And the final slide I have is about careers in zoology. What careers can you do with a zoology degree? Well, we see our graduates enter a variety of different various state agencies that are tasked with developing and conserving our terrestrial and our marine habitats. So the Environmental Protection Agency typically and the National Parks and Wildlife Service will be dealing with terrestrial habitats, whereas agencies like Bord Isigavara or Marine Institute will deal with the marine habitats. But we also see our graduates entering the private sector, including renewable energy companies, environmental consultancies, or indeed media and things like that. And I suppose the final major grouping would be where we see graduates entering further education at all levels. This could be doing a HDIP to teach biology in secondary school, or it could be a taught master's in order to develop skills for one of the other careers I just mentioned, with very keen graduates going on perhaps to further research through research masters or PhD. So I'll leave it there. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks so much, Anne-Marie. And finally, I'll just say a brief word on botany and plant science before we have our short panel discussion. So those are some slides from our colleagues in botany and plant science here at the university. And I suppose the first thing to say is that as a botany and plant science student, you'll consider topics from ecology right through to biotechnology. So you'll understand the basic biology of plants and how they interact with one another and in their environments, right through to ways in which we can now think of applying those plants in innovative ways in new biotechnologies, but everything in between. And just as with zoology and the previous topics we've been speaking about, botany and plant science in the modern world will now draw on lots of different fields and tools, including molecular biology, to best understand the function and potential of plants. So you'll learn about plants as primary producers and how they start off food webs and how their photosynthetic activity is important for carbon cycling, for example, and supporting life on the planet, and indeed their crucial link with climate change as sequesterers of carbon. But equally then on their role as materials and valuable compounds. So everything from, say, functional foods through to their use in biofuel production and perhaps even their applications as biomaterials. So there's a lot more than might meet the eye in botany and plant science. So it's the science of plants and extends from plant conservation right through to taxonomy and biotechnology, genetics, breeding, climate change and carbon budgets. And there's lots of different types of plant sciences and lots of different types of plant scientists, therefore. And depending really on what you become most interested in, you may then focus on a particular area, say, for example, for your final year undergrad project. So we've previously heard from some of the other speakers as to the opportunity you have to take a final year project in fourth year of your degree. And this is certainly also the case in botany and plant science. So how you'll do this then is again enter through GY 301, as Anne-Marie had just described for zoology, and your botany and plant science during first year will be through your biology module, but you'll also take some other modules in first year. In second year then you'll encounter some common modules that will include some biology, but also some specific ones related to botany and plant science. So you deal with aquatic plant science and plant diversity and physiology and adaptation. And then in third year, you'll get deeper into botany and plant science. You'll get into the field, think about field techniques and specialized modules as you go through third year, and into fourth year then amongst the rest of your modules you'll also take your research project, and that's where you'll really get to grips with perhaps a topic that really inspires you at that point. So where can it all lead to then? Well, to lots of different areas of application and study and understanding the important ways in which plant science underpins the way we interact with the world. So everything from human food and nutrition to climate change, to improved crops and speaking to the Sustainable Development Goals, which Mark had mentioned earlier on, through to even new drugs, extracting those and isolating them from plants, and back through to understanding food webs and food security. So opportunities will be in research and teaching in various industries, public and private, in government agencies like TAGISC and the EPA and others, the National Parks and Wildlife Service, and perhaps even in consultancy firms, or you might even decide along the way that you want to set up your own company. So perhaps in the future, some of our botany and plant science graduates will have some ideas that will create jobs all of themselves. So that's our overview then. So I'll stop sharing and I'll go back to our meeting where we're speaking with our colleagues then. So if I could perhaps maybe turn to you first, Mark, and ask what you might say to a student considering marine science. What type of student might you expect will be interested, or what might the profile be, and what might they consider?
Yes, well, I tend to feel that there's a sort of group of students who already know that they have a fascination about the marine world, and so they're more looking for information on what does this actually mean in practice, and obviously we've talked about how it relates to the other subjects, and then of course the second question is, where is this going, and then that's where we talk more about the variety of careers, which are perhaps not what you'd expect, because perhaps not everyone knows a marine scientist, whereas there would be other careers where you can think, oh yeah, I know somebody who does that. I know somebody who does that.
Sure, and maybe a similar question to you, Tiernan, Earth and Ocean Science. What interests might a student have, or which subjects perhaps in school might you be interested in that might make you think you could be interested in pursuing EOS?
If you're interested in anything in the real world, essentially that would kind of answer the question for all of us here, I think, today. I think anytime you look around and you're trying to figure out what's going on, why are rivers where they are, why are mountains where they are, and then that leads on to all the other questions about why are these habitats here and so on, or why these animals live in one particular location. So I suppose just an interest in how the Earth works in the most general sense would be a good starting point, I would guess. And then, like the others have all been saying, I think the opportunities, there are excellent opportunities, certainly in geosciences, in the broad kind of area of geoscience. We have students or graduates who are in the Environmental Protection Agency, in the Geologic Survey, in Chagos, in the Marine Institute, in research careers. And then a lot of our graduates would end up in the private sector. And that could be working for really, really big multinational companies or really small consultancy companies, dealing with everything from dealing with floods to finding rare earth elements that we need for our kind of sustainable development, or looking at energy transition. And a big growth area at the moment is in carbon sequestration, which Mark has raised. But that actually comes down to how do we physically find a location where we can do this.
Sure. And, you mentioned rare earth elements, for example, and presumably as we move to alternative sources of energy and we build electric vehicles and batteries and so on, this will become an even more acute problem,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, everything that we look at, the way this is being processed online, all our mobile phones, our laptops, our smart TVs, they all require, essentially, it was something that was said to me years ago, is that if we don't grow it, we dig it out of the ground. And we still are going to have to dig things out of the ground. We'll just have to do it in much more efficient ways and, much less intrusive ways. But yeah, I mean, batteries for everything. There's loads and loads of rare earth elements that go into make up a modern vehicle, or that go into making up the blades on a wind turbine.
And meanwhile, whilst we discuss all these things, I guess the Sustainable Development Goals are the front of our mind, and it's something that's
absolutely
certainly really important for the university. It's something we certainly take very seriously, but I think especially perhaps when it comes to some of the topics that we're talking about in this particular session, I think it's something that guides us quite a lot. Mike, if I can come to you, and it's something I think you had touched on, but it's something I also often say to prospective students as well, that the university is literally located in a unique area in the world, isn't it? With the Burren beneath us, Connemara above us, and the Atlantic Ocean on one side and the River Shannon on the other side. So how important is that, in your opinion, say for an environmental science student, or indeed any student on one of these programs, these courses?
I think it's really critical, because not only do we have these unique habitats that they can study and undertake surveys on and so on, but in the environmental science course as well, they get to meet the people who are managing these landscapes, the farmers, the landowners, and that's really critical. A lot of these landscapes wouldn't be here without those people. And I think with environmental science, you have to learn the basic sciences, obviously, but you also have to be a good listener, and you have to be able to listen to these people who have generations of knowledge on how to manage these landscapes. We don't have all the answers as scientists. We need other people as well to contribute to that. And I think, we live in an age now where everything is available on the web. You can find out lots of information. And while, again, it's quite important to know your basic ecology or microbiology and so on, that's really important as a basis. For environmental science, what we're trying to do is, through case studies and so on, is to get students to synthesize this material. So they're all in different places, all these bits and pieces of information. And some people are specialists in certain areas, but it's the people who can bring these different elements together to see how we can progress to the future, I think is really important. You know, this generation of environmental science graduates are the ones who are going to be dealing with all the environmental problems we have and finding solutions to them. And I think that's really, we're trying to train people to think that way, to think laterally, and to find solutions to those problems.
But indeed, perhaps a great time to be a young person starting off in science, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, without a doubt, without a doubt.
Yeah. Anne-Marie, when I heard you going through all of the various kind of subtopics that informs modern zoology, I couldn't help but notice that indeed molecular biology and bioinformatics and genetics is also important. So I guess you would say it's a mix of classical zoology with taxonomy, along with all of the tools that we have to study such topics nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, taxonomy nowadays uses barcodes, so it's not even recognizable as something that would have happened in Charles Darwin or Linnaeus's day. And there's a little piece of code in every organism that can be used to actually check its species. Mm-hmm. So our zoology department has at least 2 staff who are very active in this area. And a lot of the disciplines we've heard about today are generating a lot of more data now. So one thing that is very important, I think, across the board is an ability to recognize the tools we can use to analyze big data, lots of data. And that might be geographical information systems where we're mapping things in layers to build up an idea of a habitat, or it might be bioinformatics where we're actually we actually understand how to align sequences and find patterns in them. And we have a lot of expertise in the university in that regard outside of zoology, and we partner with those other expertise. And of course, we have a lot in this meeting. Everybody knows somebody who does this. So it happens in microbiology, it happens in environmental science, it happens in marine science, and it happens in zoology and botany.
Indeed, indeed. And I guess it's worth reminding our viewers that particularly say through the GY 301 degree, that if you were to say major in zoology and earn your degree in that subject, or indeed in botany and plant science, that it's possible along the way to take a minor as far as 3rd year. So you may combine one of zoology and botany perhaps with another subject that gives you further training in maybe one of those areas, and molecular biology as well. So it's possible to make a very interesting degree. What I might do is just come to Michael Day then, because we're glad to have one of our students with us. And perhaps this will be useful to anybody trying to make their mind up as to what they'd like to apply for on the CAO. So, Michael, could you tell us which degree did you take at NUI Galway?
So I did the environmental science course. I graduated in 2019, and when I was faced with the CAO and I was thinking of what I wanted to do, I kind of liked that it was a straight track. There wouldn't be any more messing with whittling down my options. So that's why one of the reasons I went into environmental science. And then I just really enjoyed the ecology that I learned in biology in 6th year, 5th year, and I wanted to continue that. So I prefer dry land to a boat, so that's why I chose EV over marine. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And could you tell me what was your best or your favorite subject when you took the Leaving Cert?
I enjoyed ag science. Ag science was cool. I liked biology as well. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap there, but yeah, I liked those two.
Mm-hmm. And when you got to 4th year, then in your degree, you did a research project. What was that on?
Yeah, that was on. I was helping a PhD student in Mike's lab. He was trapping insects on farms under different management, and he was looking at certain insects, and then I'd come along and I'd look at the stuff that he wasn't looking at, so the bycatch, and I helped him over the summer for that, and it was great crack altogether.
So at least some of the question here was investigating the impact of the management, the land management.
Oh yeah. Seeing how the different ecological factors and management practices would affect the catches and the diversity.
Right, excellent. And finally, I guess you had mentioned that you didn't want to have too many additional choices after you started. You wanted to know exactly where you were going to end up with your degree. And I would say to most of our viewers that indeed is the set of options you can have. On GY 301, as Anne-Marie had mentioned, that you have the choice to explore perhaps a little more, or if you are a little more certain as to where your destination is, you might want to make more of a straight line towards something like environmental science or earth and ocean science or marine science. But even then, inside those, you've seen the level of choice and variety in there anyway. Thanks very much, Michael. Just maybe before we finish up, Tiernan had mentioned the Sustainable Development Goals, but one thing I might ask you about, Mark, is the whole idea of, I guess, further exploring the marine environment. You know, I find it fascinating to think that something so big as that mammal, or was it a fish? I'm not sure. Shark hadn't been discovered until the 1970s, which seems amazing that we might miss it. But it really is a vast, largely maybe yet to be discovered world, isn't it?
Well, certainly. I mean, I have colleagues here who are taking video at 3 kilometers down on the continental margin, and there are PhD students who are bringing back things that don't have a name yet. That, you know, they know it's a coral, but as a species, it needs to be described. And so they're doing exactly what Anne-Marie was talking about, doing the DNA work, doing the morphological work to name new species, and that's happening in Irish waters.
Indeed, yeah. So we want to exploit, but at the same time conserve the marine environment, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we need to know the function of it and how it relates to the ecosystem and the services we get from the ecosystem. But in some respects, we know that there's a resource there, but we want to use it sustainably. And in fact, there's a lot going on at the moment. There's a marine spatial plan being debated now in the Oireachtas. So watch this space.
Indeed. I'll ask one last question, perhaps of Tiernan, but maybe Mark can help. And that is, for a viewer today, what is the difference between earth and ocean science and marine science?
Oh, that's really easy. Earth and ocean science is just better. No.
Well, apart from that.
I suppose
the difference really is that within earth and ocean science, we look at more about how the ocean works, how it functions as a system. Whereas I think in marine, it's more about how, I would guess one way of looking at it is how the ocean supports systems, you know, how it supports life. Whereas in earth and ocean science, it's more about how water works, for example, you know, how currents work, how temperature changes occur within the ocean systems. And we also, as well, I suppose, we tie the ocean to the land as well, so that we don't treat them as discretely different, so that the earth and the water are one system, you know.
Indeed. So we will need to let people go off to other things on Open Day now. One last thing that just comes to my mind, Anne-Marie, in maybe less than 10 seconds, could you tell people what is your research focused on? Because they may be interested to know.
My research at the moment is on cephalopods, squid, octopus, cuttlefish, and their fisheries for them. And these are not managed by the EU quota system, so we have to be able to come up with ways to make sure they're not overexploited. That's what I'm doing right now.
Excellent. Great. So thanks very much, everybody. I hope our viewers found this interesting and they have a little bit additional knowledge now on the areas that we've just discussed. We'll have representatives available at the Q&A later on, the public Q&A, which will be accessible through our Open Day website. But in the meantime, thanks very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.